for his sexual pleasure. 1,000 women. That's 2.5 years. Never the same woman. And he filled himself up. That's what he says, the pleasures, the delight of the sons of man. He also talks about affirmation. I became great and surpassed all who were before me. He saw his name. Then he goes on to work. And to say I worked in my toil and the works of my hands, all that my hands have done. And he comes to it all and he says, vanity. Lucid. Way. To the 2016 article that I've been quoting about Janis Joplin. It says, Mercedes-Benz is a lonely blues tune about the elusive happiness promised. Consumer as she described herself, culture, this is a middle-class white chick. She'd come to California, made her way into the music industry. She sang about Mercedes-Benz on October 1st, and on October 3rd, she died of a heroin overdose. And outside the hotel sat her Porsche. The author of Ecclesiastes is saying that these things cannot satisfy that question of our desire. And as much as Janis Joplin could scoff at the Mercedes-Benz and lean into the irony of asking the Lord for one, her life still betrayed her own confession that it was all folly. Because she just traded in one pursuit for another, and it killed her in the end. It didn't satisfy. And here's what she said about it. She said one of her friends talked about the fleeting pleasures. She was aware of the fleeting pleasures to be found behind the wheel. She'd go against traffic on blind curves with the top down, laughing, saying, nothing can knock me down. She once said, it's the one of something, listen to this, it's the one of something that gives you the blues. It's not what isn't, it's what you wish was that makes unhappiness. It's not what isn't, it's what you wish was that makes unhappiness. And that's actually what the author of Ecclesiastes is trying to invite us to consider is, what do you wish was? And so he tells this story, this pursuit, but he does so and he gives us hints. And this is the poetry of Ecclesiastes that you've got to learn how to read and to see. When he's going through his talk about his verses 4 through 8, I made great works, I built houses, I planted vineyards for myself, I made myself for gardens and parks. Especially if you were reading this in the Hebrew, you would see the language there and you would immediately begin to cycle back in your mind to another story of a king that made a garden. And what you would begin to see about what the author is doing is he's trying to say that, look, the pursuit of the garden is not the problem. It's the way you're doing it. It's what you're looking for from it. All of this language is just full of what God does in the creation of the world. Plant, garden, trees, all of fruit, to water, to sprout, to make. The language that the writer here, that the preacher uses, is hearkening back to a place, that deep longing, that desire for something that's beautiful and good and true. something that we connect with in our humanity, something that God made us for, something that is a delight, something that does satisfy. And see, what the Scriptures teach us is there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with fun, with wine, with sex, with money, with possessions. There's nothing wrong with a Mercedes-Benz. There's nothing wrong with a Porsche. There's nothing wrong with any of it. The question is, what are you trying to get from it? Are you trying to use whatever those things are in your life to answer the question, what's the point? Because if you are, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. The writer of Ecclesiastes is not telling us that pleasure is the problem. Pleasure is actually a gift from God. I took biology. I was a scientist at one time. I could only just barely get my head around all that goes into your ability to taste. Do you think that's just an accident? Do you think God made you with a tongue that was able to taste and to experience and enjoy and delight in wine or food or whatever it is, chocolates, for no reason? No, God made you to understand that pleasure is a gift from God. Gregory Alan Isaacoff, I think this is 4 or 5, in his song, The Universe, says this: the universe, she's wounded. She's got bruises on her feet. Love that. I sat down like I always did and tried to calm her down. I sent her my warmth and my silence, and all she sends me back is rain. The universe, she's wounded, but she's still got infinity ahead of her. She's still got you and me. And everybody says, she's beautiful. She's beautiful. She's beautiful. Ecclesiastes is saying that the universe, the world that God has created, is wounded, but beautiful. Good. Something to be delighted in, something to be enjoyed as a gift from God, as a gift from its maker. The universe, she's dancing. They got her lit up on the moon. They got stars doing cartwheels, all the nebulas on the tune. And the universe, she's whispering so softly, I can hear all the croaking insects, all the taxi cabs, all the bums spent change, all the boys playing ball in the alleyways. They're just folds in her dress. The universe, she's beautiful. She's wounded, but she's still got infinity ahead of her. She's still got you and me, and everybody says she's beautiful. The reality is that what the Ecclesiastes is trying to do here is to invite us to see the giver behind the pleasure, to invite us to see the beauty that is all around us, to invite us to participate in a way that understands it's a gift from the hand of the God who made it, the originator of the garden and all of its delights, pleasures. And so he invites us into this space. C.S. Lewis says it this way: if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. I was made for something else. If none of my earthly pleasures satisfy it, that does not prove the universe is a fraud. Probably earthly pleasures were never meant to satisfy it, but only to arouse it, to suggest the real thing. Ecclesiastes has invited us into a story of a world that's beautiful and beautifully made and made to be a gift, but that's broken, that's wounded, that has bruises on it. Mary Oliver says this: I tell you that the ant is very alive. I love Mary Oliver because she sees. She says, I tell you that the ant is very alive. Look at how it fusses and being stepped on. And what she's saying is there's something beautiful in the ant. It's what God has given us. There's beauty to be seen all around us. Lewis also talks about the fact that our desires are not too strong, but they're really too weak. He says we're half-hearted creatures, fooling ourselves about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us. We're like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum because he cannot imagine what is meant by the offer of a vacation at the beach. Can't conceive of what it would be like to be in Maui. He says we're far too easily pleased. That's what Ecclesiastes is. We're far too easily pleased. And here's the point. One of the things about this book, and this came out to me this week. I knew it was here, but vanity of vanities, this is one of the words that is a theme throughout the book. It's used 39 times, but you know there's a word that beats it in Ecclesiastes? This was a surprise to me. There's a word that beats it. There's a word group, and it's to see. Vanity is used 39 times. Seeing is used 47 times. And here's what he says. He says, I tested myself, I did this, verse 3, that I might see what was good for the children of man to do. And then he goes on in verse 24, he said, this I also saw is from the hand of God. And what Ecclesiastes is inviting us to do is to be the kind of people that see through the brokenness to the beauty, and see through the beauty